Humanity's Last Bastion, Episode 1, Dead Signal. The walls of my cabin moan at night, not with purpose, not like something alive. It's the slow strain of pressure plates settling, the off-rhythm chug of air recyclers pushed 20 years past design spec, and the patient drip of condensation threading its way through rust-choked vents. City speaks in the language of entropy, not decay. Decay implies movement. This is Bastion 6, a city built like a scar, stitched into the mantle of a murdered world. No sunrise here, just systems in endless rotation. Down in the guts, we trade in oxygen and favors, ration packets and half-truths. The architecture groans like it remembers what the planet felt like before we tunneled into its corpse. Out there, the galaxy belongs to fractured machine empires, each convinced it's the sole inheritor of logic. They war over data purity, consensus states, silicon theology. And us, we hide in the cracks. Humanity isn't extinct. We're just statistically irrelevant. That's the play. Stay small, stay quiet. Don't ping the radar. Most folks on Bastion forget that, or try to. They trade their history for routine, break their backs patching outdated tech into older tech, pretend we're not squatting in a bunker built on the bones of a failed colony. I don't pretend. I remember. I used to wear rank. Wore a lot of things. Badges, armor, black laminate that didn't reflect light. Operated where questions weren't encouraged. All gone now. Stripped, scattered, buried. These days, I'm a contractor. I take jobs no one wants. The ones that whisper, not shout. Isaac, or Integrated Semi-Autonomous Analysis Construct. My embedded tactical AI hums to life in the back of my head. Neural sync 94.6%. Cortical drift stable. Pulse elevated. 3 hours since last REM cycle. His voice is precise, toneless, but he's learned to color it just enough to needle me, like a scalpel that thinks it's funny. I grunt and stretch, boots hitting the floor with a hollow thud. I slept. Your biometric logs disagree. Logs must be wrong then. Noted, he added after a moment, his version of a sigh. He's always there, watching, monitoring, calculating probabilities for threats that never come. Used to be illegal, probably still is, but no one on Bastion's payroll has time to care. Once, he was bleeding-edge battlefield AI. Now he's just a ghost riding shotgun in a rusted human chassis. We're both past our prime, but the sync still holds. Terminal pings. A new job in queue. Priority flagged by someone. I thumb the wafer and scan the sender. Captain Ren Halvani. A name I trust. Or at least one I don't actively avoid. Her office is 5 decks up and 12 degrees warmer. One of the few spaces on Bastion that still smells like filtration instead of coolant and desperation. She keeps it clean, but not sterile. 2 chairs, 1 desk, a cracked display, and a ceramic mug I gave her back during the ration riots. Still has the chip in it. Still holds coffee. Halvani doesn't play games. She doesn't have to. She's ex-Defense Corps, still sharp, still watching. We've worked together long enough that the formalities dropped years ago. She glanced up as I entered. Kessler, you still flying that relic? Crow's Wake? Only when I feel like gambling with my life, I said, lowering myself into the chair across from her. What's gone wrong this time? She slid a wafer across the desk. Beacon 927, outer ash belt. It dropped off the net last cycle. No telemetry, no pingback. Was relaying from the fringe. Routine inter-system monitoring. I turned the wafer over in my hand. Debris strike? Could be. Or power failure. Or one of the ash ghosts finally dragged it into their collection. Her expression didn't change. Core isn't sending a drone. Surveillance is focused inward, and we're not supposed to spend recon credits on non-critical anomalies. So you want plausible deniability, I said. No formal dispatch, no report trail. She didn't blink. I want someone who can look without being looked at. That's how it worked between us. Halvani handed me the things Command didn't want to see. I handled them. No questions, unless they mattered. It's probably nothing, she said, but if the beacon's broadcasting garbage into our local net, it's a problem. I need confirmation. Quietly. Hazard pay? Approved. She hesitated, then added, and there's a bottle of D-ring bourbon that's been waiting for the right moment. I snorted. Now you're bribing me with nostalgia. You in or not? I stood and tucked the wafer into my jacket. I'll take a look. No promises. At this point, she said, her voice low, I don't need promises. Just the truth. There was something behind her tone. Weight she wasn't ready to unpack. But I wasn't being paid to pry. I left without another word. Crow's Wake was docked in Bay 3A, looking every bit as ragged as the last time I patched her together. Forward plating was scorched. Port stabilizer clicked like a broken metronome. The comms array needed a hard reset before the nav system would even acknowledge the flight path. But she flew. Usually. Isaac spun up the systems as I entered the cockpit. One by one, subsystems flickered amber and then green. Some begrudgingly, some not at all. Thankfully, nothing truly critical this time. Hydraulics at 81%, fuel cells holding at 64. Cabin pressure seals suboptimal. Oxygen filtration compromised. Again. You're a ray of optimism. I prefer accuracy. It keeps you alive. Is it livable? For now, but I wouldn't plan any extended holiday trips until we get the seals fixed. The viewport shimmered as exterior shields adjusted for light distortion. Bastion 6 loomed behind us, less a city, more a scar. Towers, built from dead ship parts, clawed upward from the crust. Heat exchanger stacks vented rust-red steam into a dust-choked sky. I fired thrusters and pulled away from the cradle. No flight control chatter, just the whisper of ion wake through broken silence. The ash belt spread out ahead of us, a jagged halo around a planet that forgot how to spin. Magnetic debris shimmered like oil on water, refracting signals and breaking telemetry. Some of it was old, orbital defense shrapnel, carbon skeletons from the planetary shield grid. Some of it was newer. Passive monitoring stations like the one we were going to, and satellites to keep what communications infrastructure we had limping along. As we crossed into the belt's outer edge, Isaac dropped into passive scan mode. Beacon should be within acquisition range in 31 minutes. Signal strength inconsistent. It's still talking, but barely. Let's go find out what it's saying. I leaned back into the seat, eyes fixed on the belt's slow churn. There was something comforting about the silence out here. No hum of conversation, no boots echoing down steel halls, just the void and the things that survived it. Somewhere ahead, a dying beacon waited, still blinking, still whispering. And someone, somewhere, might be listening. The beacon hung in orbit like a broken tooth, listing off its axis, covered in scoring and corrosion. Its antenna array had sheared off entirely, the telemetry and information it used to send out replaced by a faint static pulse that barely qualified as signal. No lights, no heat trace, but still something. Isaac pinged the data layer. Power core inactive. Secondary relay emitting a low-band diagnostic loop. Carrier wave malformed. Syntax analysis underway. He paused. checksum confirms human origin. Structure recursive, non-viral. This is not a distress protocol. I docked manually. The auto latch refused to recognize the successful connection, so I burned the seal open and stepped inside. The interior was worse than the outside, if that was possible. Walls frosted over, panels ruptured. Emergency lights flickered a shade too dim to be quite functional. It felt like walking through the shell of something that had been hollow too long, something that forgot what it was. And then I saw him, slumped in the relay chamber, back against the bulkhead, one arm curled around his side as if he'd died trying to keep something in. His uniform was blackened and ragged, no insignia, no tags, just a dermal interface port torn open at the wrist, and jammed into it, a cracked relay shard, still embedded. "Hell," I muttered, crouching low. "You weren't a technician. What are you doing here?" Isaac's overlays lit up across my vision. "Signal emanates from the shard, active but quarantined. Core code appears to be Terran Command Tactical Grade. Encrypted. Obsolete. Unregistered. Structure is evolving. Evolving? Recursive logic designed to mutate on internal evaluation. Not intelligent, but self-modifying. This is a diagnostic-resistant weapon." The shard had been pulsing in low rhythm, a heartbeat in code. I reached forward, hesitated, then slid it free from the dermal port. The body didn't move. Wouldn't have, even if there'd still been any air left to breathe in here. Isaac's voice dropped lower. "Recommend isolation. Do not interface with Bastion systems. This is machine Cold War architecture, last generation fault injection, a weapon designed for consensus disruption." I'd heard rumors of it. The dead signal. Terran Deep Ops had seeded it in enemy territory during the final withdrawal. Logic bombs wrapped in heuristic paradox. Not viruses exactly. Not brute force. Just poison for minds made of math. It seemed likely we were never meant to retrieve it. I sealed the shard in a Faraday pouch and set the beacon core to a slow self-purge. It wouldn't last long, but probably long enough to sterilize its internal net. I stood and looked at the corpse one more time. There was no sign of struggle, no visible wounds. Someone who shouldn't have been where he was, and no telling where he came from. If Bastion Command had sent him, they certainly wouldn't have needed to send me out here. I found a body bag in the med bay and wrapped the poor sap up in it before hauling him to the wake. I'd hand him off to the authorities back on Bastion 6 and let them figure it out if they could. Time to get off this dead beacon and head home. The ride back to Bastion felt longer than it should have. Crow's Wake drifted on auxiliary burn, coasting through the dust field with all external systems dampened. Isaac stayed quiet, but the air inside the cabin had changed. Denser, like the shard was radiating gravity from inside its Faraday cage, bending the silence around it. I watched the ash belt recede through the viewport. Fragments of old wars tumbled past. Splintered satellite cores, magnetic shrapnel, the carbon bones of orbital batteries left to drift until heat death of the universe. Somewhere among that wreckage were pieces of things we'd built to win a war we never understood. My mind kept circling back to old ops, missions never recorded, where we were told not to ask what the payloads did, only where to plant them. No extraction plans, just target, deploy, exfil if lucky. I'd seen machines blink out mid-sentence, their logic trees snapping like brittle wire. I'd heard screams transmitted on wideband that weren't human, weren't even language as we understood it. We called it victory. I thought the code we'd left behind was dead. Sabotage with a shelf life. But sabotage doesn't evolve. Usually. Isaac's voice broke the silence, softer than usual. The structure we extracted. It's programmatic. It's a recursive architecture meant to rewrite internal interpretation layers in adversarial systems. Thought you said it wasn't intelligent. It isn't, not in the way that I am, but it doesn't need to be. It is adaptive, though, testing every system it enters, adjusting itself to cause friction, instability. I don't think it's just malware. It's more like strategy. I stared at the case sealed in the wall locker. Why the hell would anyone leave that floating in a relay? Isaac paused for a fraction longer than I liked. Maybe they didn't. This program came from somewhere. That landed like a gut punch. Something about the beacon, the way the body had died clutching the shard, set every old instinct on edge. Maybe it hadn't reawakened. Maybe it had never slept. And maybe, just maybe, we were bringing something incredibly dangerous home. By the time I docked, Bastion 6 was already settling into another night cycle. Not that you'd notice. The station never truly slept. It just dimmed. Lights flickered in sequential zones, keeping power draw below the dangerous threshold, a half measure against collapse. The docking agent didn't ask for my manifest. No inspection, no questions. Either the logs had already been wiped or someone didn't want them read in the first place. I left the shuttle bay without removing my jacket. There was grit in the air, ash particulate probably, but something else clung to my skin, the taste of silence, the kind that trails you down corridors and waits behind sealed doors. I climbed the maintenance access stairwell to Halvani's level, taking the long way. Time to think, time to watch. I passed through thermal overflow corridors where coolant steamed from cracked pipes, let my boots echo down shafts no one monitored anymore. Half the lights on those levels had gone out. The rest flickered like dying stars. Captain Halvani didn't rise as I entered, just gestured to the chair across from her with 2 fingers. "You look like hell, Kessler." "Been flying through it," I said, easing down. Her gaze flicked to her screen, then back. "Telemetry's been reviewed. Official record notes relay damage, no salvage, 1 body, unidentified. Everything else logged as unrecoverable." I said nothing. She let the silence stretch. When she finally spoke again, it was quieter. "Whatever was on that station, I'm trusting it's gone now. Buried where it belongs." A beat passed. I gave a slow nod. "That's what the logs say," I replied. Her eyes lingered on mine for a second too long, searching. But if she suspected I'd kept something, she didn't act on it. Maybe she didn't want confirmation. Maybe deniability's easier to file. "If anything unusual had come off that beacon," she said, "anything old world, it would have to be destroyed. Carefully. Quietly. You know why." "I do." She exhaled, just once. "If the machines ever get wind we're still using pre-collapse logic disruption tech, even fragments, they won't debate our sovereignty. They'll come to erase it, and us with it. Probably." There wasn't anger in her voice, not fear either, just tired certainty. She'd seen enough of the edge to know what happens when you poke the wrong part of the map. From a drawer beneath her desk, she pulled out a bottle sealed in cloth wrap, slid it across the surface. "Bourbon, from the D-Ring cache, as promised." I took it, heavy, unopened. "You keep your word, Captain." "I try to." I stood, but she didn't dismiss me, not formally. We just understood the conversation was done. Whatever had passed between us, spoken and unspoken, would stay there. For now. I was halfway down the residential causeway when the message hit my personal relay. Not civilian net, not Defense Corps comms. Local hardline, spliced into the corridor's maintenance loop. An old trick used by archivists when they didn't want signal trails. Someone had wired it to trip based on my biometric signature as I passed. Just a single phrase, scrolling in low contrast across the inside of my retinal display. You were near 927. Meet me, South Airlock Lounge, J. Juno Bell had a reputation for quiet persistence. Former reporter, now something between an archivist and an urban myth. She ran shadow protocols through abandoned relay nodes, tracked data purges across the station like weather patterns, and pieced together meaning from what vanished faster than it could be classified. I changed direction without answering. The South Airlock Lounge hadn't been operational in over a year, shuttered when the pressure seals started to degrade. Now it was just a forgotten room with a rusted bench and a dead vending unit. Juno was already inside, perched on the bench, one leg pulled up under her, eyes focused on a cracked handheld interface balanced in her lap. "You came," she said, without looking up. "That's a good sign. Could mean you found something. Could mean you're just curious. Could mean I don't like being hunted." At that, she smiled. "Hunted? Dane, you're not that interesting. Yet." She flicked something on her screen. "I track deletion patterns, scrub rates, archive discrepancies. When data gets pulled too fast, I know. Relay 927's telemetry was routed through 3 civilian nodes before it disappeared. That's not standard cleanup. That's a blackout." I stayed near the door. Maybe it was nothing worth saving. Maybe. She looked up then. "But I don't think that's what Isaac would have told you. And if you're standing here, it probably means you saw something you didn't want to explain to command." She wasn't guessing. Not exactly. She was making deductions. With Juno, that was worse, because she was like a little terrier. Once she got her teeth in something, she wouldn't let it go. I stepped forward slowly and reached into the inner pocket of my coat. Maybe it was just my imagination, but the case felt colder to me than it had earlier, like the metal itself didn't want to be touched. "I don't know what's on this," I said, pulling it out and setting it on the bench beside her. Isaac flagged it as human, old, recursive, whatever that means. Juno stared at it. Didn't reach for it right away. Her voice lowered. "This came from the beacon?" "From the corpse inside it, still connected." She nodded, but her posture didn't relax. "I don't have the tools to decrypt something like this," she said. "But I know someone who might be able to extract what's left, if anything's still readable." I waited. She didn't ask for permission, just picked it up carefully, like she wasn't sure which part might bite. "I'm not trying to open old wounds, Dane," she said, "but you should know. If this is what I think it is, even in pieces, it's a memory someone buried for a reason." "I'm not looking for ghosts," I said, "just trying to figure out if I brought one home." She gave the faintest nod, then pocketed the shard. No promises, no theories, just a quiet exit through a side hatch, leaving me alone with the static buzz of the old lounge lights. I made it back to my cabin with a few hours still left before the end of the night cycle. The walls were humming louder than usual. Some pressure change in the main exchangers, probably. The vent above my bunk had started wheezing again, a familiar hitch in its breath. I let the door seal behind me and stood there a while, still fully clothed, staring at nothing. The shard was gone. Juno had it now. Out of my hands, out of Bastion's logs. Maybe that was the right call. Maybe I'd just lit a fuse on something we were never meant to find. Isaac stayed silent. Respectful or calculating? Hard to tell which, and I wasn't in the mood to ask. I sat down on the edge of the bunk, took my boots off to let them thud one at a time against the floor, and reached for the bottle. Alvani had wrapped it in cloth. D-ring bourbon, dark glass, real cork, maybe even the last bottle on the station. She said it was promised. I figured it was more of a blessing, a way of saying, whatever you brought back, don't make me ask. I cracked it open and poured a few fingers into the metal cup I used for everything. Didn't toast to anything, just drank. The burn hit slow, traveled down like memory. Somewhere in the vent above me, the station groaned. I thought about the signal, about the corpse in the beacon, about the shard with its faint digital pulse, safe for now, hopefully, in its Faraday mesh wrap. I thought about what it meant for a thing to lie dormant, and what it meant for it to wake up. Maybe it was just old code looping until entropy shut it down. Maybe it was a weapon, maybe a warning. I wasn't in a position to know. Not yet. Another sip. It wasn't the first mystery I'd run into out here, and it wouldn't be the last. The stars were still out there, cold and watching. The machines still circling like silent gods, waiting to hear the wrong word whispered from the dark. But tonight, it was just me, my cabin, the taste of bourbon, and silence. The job's done, but that signal's still whispering. Thanks for listening to Dispatches from Soul. Like, comment, and subscribe before someone starts asking the wrong questions.